Michael Dell, the billionaire who bought back his own company. In 2013, Michael Dell did something Wall Street said was impossible. He bet $24 billion of his own money to buy back the company that bore his name, just to prove every single doubter wrong. Analysts called it reckless. Activist investors tried to block him. The financial press wrote him off as a has-been clinging to a dying business. But Michael Dell didn't care what any of them thought. He'd built this company once before from a college dorm room with $1,000. And he was about to do it again from the wreckage, except this time the stakes were astronomically higher. This is the story of how a 19-year-old college dropout built one of the most dominant technology companies on the planet, watched it slowly slip through his fingers, got pushed aside by his own board of directors, and then launched one of the most audacious corporate buybacks in American history to take it all back. To understand why Michael Dell's buyback was so extraordinary, you need to understand just how massive Dell once was. At its peak in the early 2000s, Dell Inc. was the #1 PC maker on Earth. Not number 2, not a close competitor. #1. The company shipped more personal computers than any other manufacturer in the world, and it did so with profit margins that made competitors physically sick. Dell's direct-to-consumer model, which cut out retailers entirely and let customers configure their own machines, was considered one of the most brilliant business innovations of the late 20th century. Harvard Business School taught it. CEOs in completely unrelated industries studied it. Michael Dell himself was regularly mentioned in the same breath as Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. But here's what made Dell truly special. It wasn't just a computer company. It was a supply chain masterpiece. While competitors were stuffing warehouses full of inventory that depreciated by the day, Dell was building machines to order and shipping them directly to your door. This meant Dell collected payment from customers before it even had to pay its suppliers. Think about that. Negative cash conversion cycle. The company was essentially using other people's money to fund its operations. It was beautiful. And for over a decade, it worked flawlessly. Now let's go back to where it all started, because the origin story is almost absurdly humble. So when Michael enrolled at the University of Texas at Austin in 1983 as a pre-med student, everyone around him sort of knew it wasn't going to last. And it didn't. Within months, he was buying old IBM PCs, upgrading them with better components, and reselling them out of his dorm room at a significant markup. The business grew so fast that by the end of his freshman year, he was doing between $50,000 and $80,000 a month in sales. His parents drove down to Austin to have a serious conversation about his future. He told them he wanted to drop out and do this full time. They made a deal. If the business didn't work out over the summer, he'd go back to school. In 1984, at the age of 19, Michael Dell incorporated his company as PCs Limited with just $1,000 in startup capital. Within 4 years, the company went public. Within a decade, Dell Computer Corporation was generating billions in revenue. By 2001, Dell had captured the #1 spot in global PC market share. Michael Dell became the youngest CEO to ever run a Fortune 500 company. He was worth billions. He was on every magazine cover. The Dell model was considered unbeatable. And then, slowly at first, and then all at once, everything started to unravel. The turning point wasn't one single event. It was a slow erosion that Dell, and frankly the entire PC industry, failed to see coming. The first crack appeared around 2004 and 2005. Competitors, particularly HP and Lenovo, started copying Dell's direct sales model while simultaneously maintaining their retail presence. Suddenly, Dell's core advantage wasn't so unique anymore. At the same time, the PC market itself was beginning to commoditize. Margins were shrinking across the board, and Dell's famous efficiency couldn't overcome the fundamental problem that PCs were becoming interchangeable boxes that consumers chose based almost entirely on price. Then came the real gut punch. In 2006, Dell was hit with an SEC investigation into its accounting practices. It turned out that Intel had been making secretive, enormous payments to Dell, essentially paying Dell to not use AMD processors. When these payments were eventually disclosed, it became clear that a significant chunk of Dell's operating profit hadn't come from operational brilliance at all. It had come from what were essentially kickbacks. The company paid a $700 million penalty to settle the charges. The reputational damage was incalculable. Michael Dell had actually stepped down as CEO in 2004, handing the role to Kevin Rollins while remaining as chairman. When the problems accelerated, Dell came back as CEO in 2007. But by then, the damage was deep. The company was losing market share. Its stock price had been cut in half from its highs, and the world had moved on. Apple launched the iPhone in 2007. Cloud computing was beginning to reshape enterprise IT. The PC, which had been Dell's entire identity, was becoming a shrinking piece of a much larger technology landscape. For the next 5 years, Michael Dell tried to transform the company from the inside. He pushed into enterprise services, acquired companies, tried to pivot towards solutions and software. But Wall Street didn't buy it. The stock languished. Analysts openly questioned whether Dell as a company had a future. And here's what really stung. Some of Dell's own board members and major shareholders began treating Michael Dell less like the visionary founder and more like a caretaker for a dying patient. He was still technically in charge, but the whispers were everywhere. The Dell era was over, the PC was dead, and Michael Dell was a relic of a bygone age. That's when Michael Dell decided to do something radical. If the public markets wouldn't give him the time or the freedom to transform his company, he would take it private. He would buy back Dell, every single share, and he would do it with his own fortune on the line. The leveraged buyout he engineered in 2013 valued Dell at roughly $24.9 billion. Michael Dell rolled his entire $14 billion stake into the deal and partnered with Silver Lake Partners to raise the rest. It should have been straightforward. Founder wants to buy his own company, shareholders get a premium, everyone moves on. But it was anything but straightforward. Carl Icahn, the legendary activist investor, launched a furious campaign to block the deal. Icahn argued the buyout price was too low and that Dell was trying to steal the company on the cheap. Southeastern Asset Management, another major shareholder, joined the opposition. What followed was months of one of the nastiest, most public corporate brawls in modern business history. Proxy fights, lawsuits, poison pen letters. Icahn called the deal a swindle. Dell's camp called Icahn an opportunist. The financial press covered it like a heavyweight title fight. In September 2013, after multiple raised offers and a special shareholder vote that was delayed and contentious, Michael Dell finally won. The deal closed at $24.9 billion. Dell Inc. was taken private, and just like that, Michael Dell was free. What happened next is arguably the most impressive act of corporate transformation in the 21st century. Free from quarterly earnings pressure and Wall Street short-termism, Dell went on an absolute acquisition spree. The company bought EMC Corporation in 2016 for $67 billion, the largest technology acquisition in history at that time. This gave Dell control of VMware, a crown jewel of enterprise software, and instantly transformed the company from a struggling PC maker into a diversified technology infrastructure giant. Dell Technologies, as it was now called, went public again in 2018 through a complex tracking stock transaction. And here's the kicker. The company that Wall Street had left for dead was now worth vastly more than when Michael Dell had taken it private. His personal net worth ballooned from roughly $15 billion before the buyout to over $50 billion by the early 2020s. The doubters, the analysts, Carl Icahn, every single person who said Michael Dell was finished, they were all wrong. So what can we actually learn from this? First, founders have an advantage that hired executives almost never do: conviction born from creation. Michael Dell didn't just run this company, he was this company. When everyone else saw a sinking ship, he saw unfinished work. Second, public markets are phenomenal at pricing the present, but often terrible at pricing transformation. The short-term pressure of quarterly earnings reports nearly destroyed Dell's ability to reinvent itself. The moment that pressure was removed, the company flourished. And third, sometimes the most powerful move in business isn't launching something new. It's having the courage and the capital to double down on something everyone else has already given up on. Michael Dell was 19 when he started his company with $1,000. He was 48 when he risked his entire fortune to buy it back. And today, Dell Technologies generates over $90 billion in annual revenue and remains one of the most important infrastructure companies in the world. Not bad for a college dropout who used to sell newspapers. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe for more business stories like this one.